Power rankings, do they matter? I don't know. All I know is that it gives an idea. And power rankings, what I do like about them is that they're not just straight standings, right? So they actually have into account who's playing well right now versus what their record is, so on and so forth. So sometimes you'll see power rankings where a team with the worst record is ranked ahead of a team with a better record just because right now they're playing good football. Maybe they're getting healthy, something like that. So our good friends over at Pride of Detroit, I say our good friends like we know them, because we don't, but they do a great job of assembling. And this week they did an article where they assembled all the power rankings that they saw and where people ranked with a little blurb or excerpt from those power rankings. So I want to ask the question, are the Detroit Lions finally getting the media love, media attention that we often, let's be real, just don't get in Detroit, right? Detroit versus everybody. There's a reason we say it. So let's go ahead and look and see where we're at. But before we do that, I want to play a little game with you. Where do you think we should be ranked? 32 NFL teams, 14 make the playoffs. Where should we be ranked? You have 5 seconds. All right. And now as you think about it, I'm going to throw this up to you. And I want to see if the rankings nationally are even close to you, just to see if you have a similar feel for our team as what the national media does. So in the first one, we get to see the Athletic. I think the Athletic does a great job. This is the biggest jump, four spots, and they say we have a 16.2% chance to make the playoffs, which I think is a little high of a percent. But and he just talks about how good our offense is. Now remember, 14 teams make the playoffs. So that means that based on how good our team is right now, we are just on the cusp or the fringe of being a playoff team at number 15. He calls in 40-point outburst in Sunday's jubilant win over Jacksonville. St. Brown had a big day. The Lions are not dead yet in the playoff chase and probably have the best vibes of any sub 500 team. I don't think you can argue that. There are no other team. I think the best vibes going into the game may have been the Jaguars at 4-7. I think they were feeling really good. They just had a big win over the Ravens, and then we absolutely shellacked them, which tells me what I've seen from this team is different than in years past. Because when you have teams that aren't quite there yet, they have a big win and then they have a big letdown. That's what the Jaguars did. The Lions didn't do that. They didn't do that. I'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in a different video. So Yahoo Sports, another big jump. He said, Frank said, imagine if the Lions had beat the Bills on Thanksgiving. That game that was tied until the final few seconds. They're not dead in the playoff race, which is impressive after a 1-6 start. Detroit is playing very well. I completely agree. I was thinking the same thing this weekend. Like, what if we had beat the Bills? And you can't go back and do that. You can't go back and do that. But we'd be a 6-6 team. We would be one game out of the playoffs, and we'd all be talking about how, like, oh, no. Playoffs aren't a long shot. Like, we really should be starting to not expect it, but like, this is legit, like a 30-40% chance that we should make the playoffs. There's still a long shot, everybody. We need some help from other people. NFL.com has us at 17. Again, they're talking about how the offense is for real. They talk about the explosiveness with Swift and St. Brown are both healthy. They talk about the pick that we have that's still coming to us. So, yeah. Yeah. And here's what I've talked about in the past. Called Sunday, Dan Campbell called Sunday as complete a team win as I've ever been a part of. Dan Campbell said, that's great. Like, that's great. All right, the Ringer not giving us a lot of love. We've won 4 of our last 5, yet somehow we're still at 18. They're playing the best football of the season right now. But they're still not giving us love. They're still sitting us at 18. USA Today at least is giving us, we're at 18, but at least giving us love with 3-spot jump. Despite a horrendous start to the season, the remaining schedule very much suggests the surging squad should get 8 or 9 wins, which might allow them to sneak in the postseason. Again, we're getting into these people, USA Today, CBS Sports. Look at how quick these are. It's like, do you even watch, or are you just like, all right, we can't really, they dominated them. So, okay. And there's, you can tell there's no in-depth thing. So I'm not even really thinking about those. Number 1 in red zone efficiency. I always love this. It's like, oh, let's just take a quick little stat and we'll do it. They moved them up to 20. And then actually, this is the biggest jump is Monday morning quarterback. 40 points. I think it was a wonder for Connor. I think it was now they haven't proven it to me yet. And then after the shellacking of the Jaguars, they're like, okay, you have to be a decent team to beat another NFL team that good. But here's what he said that terrified me: Ben Johnson into one of the few no-brainer spots for vacant head coaching positions. Oh boy. Let's not talk about that. We finally get something good going, and then it's gone. And then Sporting News puts us at 22. So 22 is the low, 15 is the high. Let me ask you this question. Sports Talk Detroit Nation. Is that fair? Is that where we should be? Do you think we should have one where we should be maybe ranked ahead of a team like the Giants or the Commanders, teams that we've beaten that have better records than us, actually? Do you think that we deserve to be popped up ahead of some of those type of teams, or do you think we're right where we should be? Because personally, I think we're right where we should be in the power rankings. Now, I'm not saying that right now I'd rather play 15 to 21 other teams. That's not what I'm saying. I don't think anybody wants to play the Detroit Lions right now because they're streaking. They are red hot. But what I am saying is that our overall body of work, even with taking into account the most recent surge, should put us right around that 15 to 18 range. I think it makes sense. The question is, where do you think that we should be ranked and why? Maybe go take a look at a couple of these rankings, see the teams that are right around us, above us, below us. But the NFL this year is kind of doing something different, especially in the NFC, where it's just like, yep, here's your teams that are good records. And then there's a pretty big gap for the rest of us. It's either 2 games above 500 or 2 games below 500. So there's still a big gap, full 2 games behind with that group of teams on the top and on the bottom. The AFC is a little more convoluted, a lot of sub 500 teams. But when we look at this all, I think the Lions are exactly where they should be. And then the next question has to be, is playoffs real? Like, is that a real consideration? Is that a real thought? Like, I guess I just have to ask that question. I have broken down the numbers, and the Washington Redskins, I've looked at the schedule. I've seen the Giants. I said the Redskins. I'm so sorry. The Commanders. I've seen the Giants. I've seen the Seahawks and all their schedules, and I very easily could see all of them going somewhere in the 9-7-1. 8-1 for the Commanders and the Giants. I think that the Seahawks could very easily go 9-8 or 10-7 based on their current records. So that means that a record of 9-8 or 10-7, 10-7, I think likely gets us in. So we have to run the table. 9-8? I don't think it does it. I don't think it does it because I think Seattle is that team that's 9-8. And I think that tie between the Commanders and the Giants allows one of them to be 9-7-1, which puts them a half a game ahead of us going into it. That was rough news for us. So we know what we got to do. We got to run the table. It starts with Minnesota. All right, let me know. What do you think? What are the chances? How many games do we win going forward? We'll talk about it, I'm sure, at some point. All right, you guys, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Get part of this community if you haven't yet. What are you waiting for? Just do it. All right, see you on the next